Hey again. Hey everyone, you've on to us with What the Freak. There's no doubt there will be saying that today because we're deep diving today, and again, my phone recorder, all of a sudden I was mentioning some things and it gets to my point. How the power of perception, which are influencing our choices, which is how we got where we are today. And I have some outlines today because a lot to get through in a short amount of time, and I feel it will paint a picture for people of what could be happening in the world today and in our own lives, in our own individually as well as collectively. And because they impact our choices, they're going to impact our relationships and our outcomes. And if we are not happy where we're at, helping to know how to figure out why we're where we're at, so then we can do something about it. It affects our relationship with ourselves too, which is key, because until we have that relationship with ourselves, our relationships on the external are going to be affected negatively. And we're going to believe it's them and project, when really, what are our perceptions? Why are we saying what we're saying? Why are we feeling what we're feeling? And why are we believing it's true about the other person, when really it could be the lens that we're looking through? And I'm going to be calling out some stuff today that is not to call out anybody individually or specifically. It is more those who have been in charge of influencing our perception and how much it's impacted our lives and our outcomes and how we feel and our relationships and the shit we've endured as a result because of blindly believing what we're being told by those in trusted positions of authority. And our perceptions are what shape how we feel and shape how we see ourselves and the world and others. Our perceptions. And again, this is also why we hear based on how we're perceiving as well. So what we are willing to listen to or even just comprehend is going to be determined by, number one, our willingness to be open, which would mean we would have to be out of a certain level of stress to be able to comprehend. And so I'm being old school here, Gen Xer, this frequency chart of emotions from Dr. David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force. And if you look at the cone shape and where most people are, the very bottom, shame, guilt, apathy, grief, then fear. And most people are at minimum fear. And for certain reasons, a lot of people are in shame and guilt because of the shit we've been taught is real and true about ourselves, our lives, and how it works. So here's why it's a waste of time to even try to explain to people, because of where they're choosing to be and being shut off, why it's pointless to even try to reach them. Which is why I'm simply just sharing my perspective, my research, what I've learned in my journey to overcome my shit. in a simple, easy to apply way that makes it possible. And when I believed it wasn't, I had really given up hope and was done. So I get what it is to just not be open to what's being shared, because there's just so much bullshit out there. Like, who knows what's true? And that's where it gets interesting. Because how do we know what's true? And we've been trusting people in authority to tell us what's real and true for a very long time, right? And that's how it's always been. And, you know, just doing what we're told. That's what I did for a long time. Until that wasn't working, and then I wanted to know what the freak. So going back to the chart, here's reason. There's reason. And here's where most people are. Why? Why are most people there? Why are most people in these states of being? That's where it gets interesting. In what I came to learn, especially overcoming narcissistic abuse. And it was studying and learning those traits and doing what I could to understand the psychology behind that, because I had those traits unknowingly. So why did I have them? What was I raised with? What examples was I shown? Not what words they were using, what example they were showing. And so I got into behavior patterns. Growing up the way my parents were, got into language patterns. Learned how to speak that way. Learned in school how to speak and what words meant. Whew. So, interesting how we've been taught from multiple levels of trusted positions of authority fear tactics. Shamed and judged for making mistakes. Criticized. Made to feel small, unworthy of God's love. Having to prove it. Having to prove ourselves. Prove our love. Prove our worth. To be worthy of receiving love. And where else are we taught that? Where did they learn it? Where did our parents learn it? Where did their parents learn it? Where did their parents learn it? And so on. And then we go back to, again, history, the Crusades, the Inquisitions, the force of believing the way they say or die. Comply or die. And I'm sharing this because if we think that the pandemic was the last of what's coming, we're not going to be prepared, really, because guns and ammo is not going to win this battle. And how interesting that we're taught what to think, what to believe, not how to think and how to experience to know what to believe is real and true. We're told what to do. We're told how to be. And we're trying to follow those rules. And yet, how are we being? How are we feeling? And why is there this inner conflict between what we're saying and how we're being told to believe and be, and we're following the rules, yet shit just keeps showing up in our life. So, where does this come from? Who are we listening to and believing, and why? Because that's how it's always been. I did that too for a long time. It was what's normal. It's what's normal. To just follow the ones in authority and do what they say. And then growing up again in that cult, the religious cult I grew up in, it was interesting how the behaviors of my parents correlated with the behaviors I was shown an example of taught in that religion. And then I saw how common it is in a lot of them. That we're judged and shamed and guilted and fear tactics and don't question and just do what you're told. And don't do anything bad or wrong, or you'll be judged by God. You'll go to hell for making mistakes and being imperfect. Yeah. So we're taught shame and guilt and fear and lack and unworthiness, and to listen to those entrusted positions of authority. Who, do they have our best interests in mind? Or are they just about power and control? And why would we listen if they don't have our best interests in mind? And it's clear because of friends I have that are experts, which I was sharing in the video before, so if I'm repeating myself, forgive me because I got stopped. They are experts, brilliant in their field, genetics, bioengineering, sound, many who I've consulted with in my research that care about people and really came out with things and discovered things that really helped people. I have friends that came up with a fix for COVID and their stuff was destroyed at the border. And multiple other incidences. Friends that have, went to prison for a few months because they were trying to shut down what they were doing because they were reversing Alzheimer's, autism with what they had. And that they now can't sell anymore. So, why are we listening to people that don't give a shit about us? And so I set out to find out what the freak was going on because I'm listening and doing all the things I'm told, and my life was hell. And I realized why we're being shut down mentally, emotionally, physically, and what is keeping us in this, what was keeping me in that state. I won't speak for anybody else. I'm simply here to share a perspective to help people, because this isn't to help me. I'm putting myself out there and saying some shit that I know a lot of people will judge me for. And I'm sharing this because I feel it's a perspective worth listening to, considering people sit there and complain about their life and don't know what to do or who to trust or what will actually work. And so I'm sharing that from having CPTSD, it works. From having felt super fearful and insecure and terrified all the time and stressed out all the time, It works. It helps. And it's simple. And we can do something about it when we choose. Because pandemic wasn't, that was practice. And it's not something that we need to be afraid of. It's simply understanding potentially what's happening so that we can know what to choose. So that should something similar happen, even a natural disaster, so we respond and versus react. So we're thinking critically and clearly and not codependent and looking to everything and everyone else for answers and what to do. We will know. Because we will be trusting and having faith in that guidance that we've been taught not to listen to and to shut down. That, Jesus said, be in this world, but not of it. What do we think he meant? What examples did the Pharisees and the scribes set, and what example did Jesus and the apostles set? And I'm just using Christianity as an example because to me that's the main one that is teaching there is a God outside of us and that it's some dude on a throne or something. One of the etymologies of the word God is the balcony seats of a theater. Perhaps meaning a higher perspective. And a higher perspective meaning multiple perspectives have been considered. So that we're not limiting ourselves to our singular linear position and thinking we have all the answers and have it all figured out. So, again, going back to, I'm sharing these things because of my experiences and the research I've done and giving a shit. And growing up doing all the same thing, believing all the same things. And when my kids were kidnapped by my ex, and I had no recourse because we didn't have a custody agreement. It had been amicable up until that point. And I'm going to church and I'm following all the rules and I'm asking them for guidance of what to do or help support something. And what did they say? Well, I've never experienced anything like that before, so I can't help you. And we can assign that to, oh, well, that's your church. Oh, well, that's your experience. And that's true. And I'm glad for those that have had good experiences with this. I'm sharing what this helped me see on a bigger scale. And so when that happened, there happened to be a Bible reading that week on the Israelites when they were wandering in the wilderness and bitching because their life wasn't comfortable. And yet they had all they required to survive it. Interesting. And so then they saw the nations having rulers, kings. And they were asking God, we want a visible king. And I didn't know this for a long time until we had that Bible reading and I wanted answers. And I was just trying to, distract myself by just reading and doing what God wants me to do so I'll be blessed and I'll get my kids back. And so I'm reading it and I have this experience with this trusted leader who I trusted to tell me my relationship to God what it was and meant. Look to him all the time. Am I approved? Am I worthy? Will God love me? And it said, they kept asking, and God kept telling them, have I not provided for you? Have I not given you, your sandals never wore out. You got manna. You have all these things that I'm providing you. Why are you not grateful for that? And they kept asking him for the visible king. And so finally he said, okay, and it will not go well for you. And when I read that, I realized God just wanted us to rely on him the whole time. Him. God. I would say love. I would say the higher vibrations, energy, frequency, the all that is, the all intelligence. And at the same time, him, her, whatever. It was, God was saying, I've provided for you the whole time. You choose a visible king, that's going to be on you. That changed my world after that. And that's when I started just really praying and what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And what was interesting is I started getting guided to things that weren't just in that religion. And looking at things that I had been taught, don't look at that, don't question this. And I started to be guided to the things outside of that. And wow, what an eye-opener. What an eye-opener to what was shared that was answering questions for me and also helping me get a better, clearer picture and perspective. And again, look at, going back to the example of Jesus. Okay, now mind you, again, this is just stories to learn from. Doesn't mean we have to believe in Jesus, whatever. Just the lesson in the story. And looking at the examples that we're seeing versus the stories that we're reading and learning. And what we're being told the stories mean versus what the stories are saying. So, didn't Jesus say, obviously the do not judge if you don't want to be judged, forgive if you want to be forgiven, you received free, give free? That was an interesting one to me. Because how many churches are running like a business? And then also having this person in a trusted position of authority to tell us what our relationship to God is and means, and whether we're forgiven or not. So I'm noticing all these things. And it wasn't until I started to question, I started to look for truth. I wanted to know the truth, regardless of what it meant, even if it was what I didn't want to hear. Because I just wanted answers, because I'm like, what the fuck? That I have my children taken from me, and it's allowed without repercussions, when it's simply immoral, regardless of whether it's legal or not. So it was that event that really got me looking and questioning a lot of stuff, because it's during those times you really see who and what people are. And it's got nothing to do with what religion they are or what title they have. or what letters or what papers they have. And it's got everything to do with who they are as a person. And there are people, like I always talk about, my just a dishwasher friend, who have provided me mind-blowing insights that has none of those things. So what stories are we listening to and believing? And if they don't have our best interests in mind, why are we listening to it? Which helps me get to the, what I desire to do, which is make this brief. And I also wanted to make sure to cover certain points that are important, because why did Jesus call the Pharisees and the scribes hypocrites? Didn't he say, you honor me with your lips, and yet your hearts are far removed from me? And yet, what example are we seeing? Why? And then Jesus wore regular clothes, robes, rode into the city on a donkey, no fanfare, just a normal dude, nowhere to lay his head. And then we have examples of those sitting on a throne acting superior, as though they're appointed by God and we just believed them, because what example are we seeing? Jesus didn't put himself on a pedestal. He was hanging out with the prostitutes and the tax collectors. He was getting what he needed. And it wasn't a giant palace sitting on a fucking throne, acting better than anybody else. He had humility, which made him open to listening to others, and kept him realizing we're all that. And what do I mean by that? Well, essentially what I realize is we're, long story short, we're being kept adult children. We're being told who to listen to, who to believe, what to believe, and don't question it. And forgetting who we were told we are by Jesus. And other cultures we're trying to share. So I wanted to print this. Again, I'm old school, okay? Bear with me. This example of the abracadabra. And the symbol. And the abracadabra is Aramaic. And it means, with my words I create, and with my words I influence. Influence what? Our thoughts, perhaps? Our perceptions? That's shaping our reality? And shaping what shows up in our life, and who we're choosing to surround ourselves with, what we're tolerating, who we're allowing to influence our perceptions. Who are we allowing to influence our perceptions, which is impacting our choices and our trajectory? And why are we believing them blindly? So what's interesting, I've used the term in videos before where attorneys use this term called paper swamping. And it's where they bombard the opponent with so much paperwork and legalese that they get psychologically overwhelmed and just want to give up and give them their way. Interesting analogy, considering all the stories. What I realized as I went through the enlifted method, the abracadabra, as I peeled away, going through my story, as I peeled away all the layers of stories I was telling myself unconsciously, not aware, were influencing my perception in the background of my mind unknowingly. And how that was impacting my perception of myself, which was impacting how I showed up in the world to others. And whether I was masking to be approved and to be accepted and loved and valued, and not realizing my own worth and value, the value of my perception, perspective, beingness, intention, who I am as a person. I needed other people's. And it came down to the stories I was telling myself and that I was believing based on the shit I had been grown up being told is real and true about me, about my life, about others, about my world. And when I uncovered that and uncovered the shame I was made to feel and the guilt I was made to feel, I realized it created a self-licking ice cream cone. We get judged, shamed, guilted, punished with fear tactics and all this crap. And believe my story, believe what I'm telling you, or be punished by God. God is love. Being punished by love. And then what's happened to me, I realized when I would just do my best to love others, I'd get attacked. And then it was, once I discovered, I was like, oh, that's where it comes from. We've been taught to attack love and truth. And then when I realized and reverse engineered my story, which helped me reverse engineer a lot of other stories, I realized what this is symbolic of. And the people of that time wore this as an amulet around their neck to remind them so that they could maintain control and remember it's all stories, and so that they could be reminded of, oh, I am my stories that I tell myself, about myself, to myself. And that affects how we show up. And when I removed all the stories, uncovered all the lies for me that I was told and taught, funneled it down to the basic truth. I am what I say I am, believe I am, what I'm focused on, what I'm choosing. And it is for no one else to tell us what that is, which is why experience is the best teacher. Yes, we want to guide others, people we care about, for their best interests. However, what are we telling them their best interest is? Because is it based on a lens we're looking through that's blurred by things that may not be true? And then something came to me, because I started to get messages, and what's interesting is, I'm feeling all those stories and breaking free from all those stories. I'm feeling, going back to the emotional frequency chart, I started to feel the expansion of being able to breathe and relax and be at peace, because I was starting to understand the stories and what they were telling me and what they meant for me. When I went through and read all these texts and research and religious literature, I started to see the truth amidst the lies, because I was looking for the truth. I wanted to know the truth. And then I started to see the truth amidst the lies amongst a lot of other stories and things I was seeing. Even in movies and songs, and you hear and see, oh, that's how they're hiding in plain sight. That's how they're playing the game. And they're making the truth look crazy through programming, television programs, causing people to immediately judge, so they're not listening to themselves or to anything else outside of their known world, and keeping us controllable. Sorry. Controllable. And in shallow breath. So we're not breathing, which is keeping us in our chest, which is keeping us in our head, which is keeping us overthinking and stressed out, not having time and energy to slow down and breathe and listen and take in what's happening in our life, in our world, in our outcomes, and why it's happening, so that we're not listening to our inner guidance that is connected to our emotions, which is our true north, which is our connection. Because if we go from here to here, game's over for them. And what I realized with, let's go this way. When I went through the abracadabra and I was getting all these messages and realizations and downloads, uploads, whatever you want to call them, not from my own thoughts and limiting beliefs or anybody else's, I was getting the guidance clearly. And the more I uncovered the lies, the more I felt the truth. The more I felt that connection to source, to love, to what it actually means. And I'm sharing this because I'm seeing, it's obvious where stuff is headed. And we are ultimately being manipulated on a really deep level, so that we are disconnected from each other and from actually feeling. I believe that that's why you can't see God, you feel God. Love. So we're bombarded with all these stories of what's real and true, and we're believing it without questioning, because that's what we've been taught. So then I thought, oh, interesting. We flip it over. We started at source. All the stories and all the population and all the things trickled down to where those that knew this stuff, hey, I believe that's where the Tower of Babel, when the languages were scattered, it was the language of love. Because all the cultures are saying a lot of the same thing at the core. And it is keeping us separated and divisive, which is not from God. Because God is unity, God is oneness, God is wholeness, and what examples are we seeing? And if we are Christian, and if we are believing in a higher power, why are we where we are? Why are we treating each other the way we are? And what are we going to do about it? And are we willing to do something about it? What did the Pharisees? They were all about the rules and the law and missing the point, the principle, which is love, which is God. God is love. We are aspects of God. We are love. And what we've been taught that to be has been covering the truth of it. So people can label me with all the labels we've been given for people who have had experiences that are unexplainable and judged and given medication and put in mental institutions. Now, I'm not saying there's not mental illness, okay? I mean, there's obviously, if their voice is telling them to be more love, are we going to put them in a mental institution because they're getting answers and hearing stuff that's not from this world? And we're going to judge them for it? Interesting. Interesting. How the narrative is being controlled and we're blindly following it and not questioning. And really, it's easy. Believe the stories from the people who have your best interests in mind. Because that'll be on your way to the true north, to the truth. And it's not just me. I've got a slew of friends that are doing the same thing and just creating and co-creating and having fun co-creating and letting each person have their free will to choose what they choose and live in mutual respect of that choice. And at the same time, be accountable and responsible for those choices. And learn to regulate our emotions so that we are communicating and not reacting and projecting and assuming and judging and shutting ourselves off from potential truth that we may not be aware of yet because we don't have all the answers. When the Israelites were in Jerusalem, what happened? When the Roman armies first came, they encircled the camp. And the people were in fear, and they were there for a time. And then suddenly they just left. And God said, flee to the mountains to be protected from what's coming. And so they did. A lot of them listened for a time. And then there were those that stuck with it, and then there were those that missed the old life and went back to the comforts of where they were before. What was familiar, what was comfortable. And then next thing you know, the Roman armies came back and attacked the camp. And it was a fate worse than death, because it wasn't like they were all just killed. And mountains, in the guidance I received, are representative of the higher vibrations, the fruitages of the spirit: love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faith, mildness, patience, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Because when we are operating in that way, we are going to act and make choices for the benefit of ourselves and others, and respect and taking them into consideration. Simply not harming others. Simply not judging others. Let them be them. Let them do them. They're creating their own hell by choosing not to listen. They're doing it to themselves unknowingly, and life and death is in the power of the tongue. The blessing and the malediction. Choose life. We can speak life into people. We can encourage and inspire and motivate each other. So why are we not doing that? Why are we not seeing examples of it given? Which is how we got to where we are, because we're just going by what we've been told and taught as examples. And it wasn't until I applied this stuff and started changing my words. Word of God is alive. Jesus was known as the Word. Abracadabra, with my words I create. I started changing my words, it changed me. It changed me. And I felt it. Felt it. And that's why a lot of people can't comprehend it, is because it's got to be experienced. And coming from that hell made it all that much more heaven for me. Because now I'm grateful. I'm grateful it pushed me to this point where I have that feeling, that peace, that happiness, that contentment, that joy, that connection with others who also get it. And it's freedom. And it's able to navigate the challenges and stop judging ourselves and punishing ourselves from the self-licking ice cream cone we've been taught to lick, which is shit. It's a shit cone. And it's things that we can choose a different flavor. We can choose a different frequency, which is what I believe God to be, a frequency that we feel when we look for it and desire it and look for that connection. That's why the truth was hidden from the wise and intellectual ones. It takes humility to be willing to listen, to be open to somebody else's perspective outside of the labels and judgments that we tend to put on it, because that's what we've been taught to do. Interesting. We're taught only listen to experts, only listen to those with labels and all this stuff. But yet who is Jesus hanging out with and listening to? Are we following that example that we claim to be? And this isn't judgment on anyone. This is why I'm sharing what I'm sharing, because this shit has been taught and we've been listening to it. And we can listen to all of it and learn from all of it when we choose with our free will, because we're choosing either way. We are impacting our lives with our words and our intentions and our behaviors and our feelings either way. And it can be fun. It is fun when we let go of all the stories, and do we even know if they're really true? I mean, seriously, we're believing so much stuff and worrying about so much stuff, and that's what I realized as I was going through my research. I was like, wow, it's actually pretty simple. Uncover the shame that was originally covered in shame because they disconnected from God in the first place and believed themselves to be separate from that. So it's remembering we are that. All that. And we can access, when we're open, a channels, just like cable, of, hey, what's the truth? Guided to this, guided to that. Somebody shows up. Some God guided to some videos. It's showing up because I'm looking for it. So what are we focused on? What are we focused on with our reticular activating system that is causing whatever to show up? It's a big deal, because it can be so much easier and flow so much smoother when we learn to see the code in the matrix, so to speak. See the truth amidst the lies by looking for it and asking for it and seeking it. And that's what I did. And that's how I came to be where I am, which is having fun and in peace and happiness and joy and all the fruitages of the Spirit, because I'm applying it. Simply applying it. And it's helped me stay open to seeing things beyond just the shit we're told and taught is real and true. So let's have fun. Join the freak show. Let your freak flags fly. And we'll be having an event correction on the other videos. It's going to be June 14th. Freaky Friday 14th. So happy Freaky Friday, everyone. I know this was a lot to take in, and it's because life's short. Life's short. Let's have fun and stop pissing in each other's Wheaties unnecessarily and ruining everybody else's ability to have any fun and making our kids stressed out and overwhelmed by dismissing them and just coping and existing. Everybody being shut down and shut off when we just get together and support each other. It can be fun. Laughing, joking, sharing, crying, going through all of it. Being there for one another. What unity really means. And not lip service. So, thank you all. I know this was a long one. I hope it helped provide some perspective and experience to keep us using our words to speak life. And when we are speaking negatively to or about someone else, guess who's also getting the poison? Everything is frequency, and what we are saying, our subconscious does not understand anything outside of us. So what we're saying and what we're believing is impacting our own frequency and what is showing up. So let's have fun and get rid of all the rest of the stories so that we can enjoy life and get back to the basics, the simplicity of the truth. For me, and I hope for you.